are, first day of the Guru Festival at WhiteAcres. I've drawn peg 23 on Trelawney. It's a good area to be fair. I have got two end pegs, peg 20 and peg 19 in me, but the wind's blowing into this bank. It's a little bit tight here, but hopefully we'll catch a few fish. Plenty of carassios, big F1s live around this area, so never know. Let's give it a go and see what happens. So there we are, day one's done. Like I said earlier on, I drew peg 23. It's on a little bit of a point, and pegs 22 and pegs 24 are in as well, so it's really tight there. But I managed to catch a few fish. I've caught 51 pound 5 ounces. I've won the section. I think I'm either second or third on the lake. How have I caught? So basically, I've started on a top 4 on meat, which is just up the slope a little bit, so out of the silt. I started there just kindred 6 cubes of meat, fishing a nice sort of a nice meat rig, not a carp rig, like an F1-y sort of rig. So I fished an F1 maggot with a 1.5 bristle. I've had a few F1s to start there. I've had one carp there as well, about £5, and then it's gone quiet. So after an hour, I've gone out on my long line where I've been kindering some pellets. Took me a while to get a bite, and the cold wind that was coming into me, the ripple, was making it hard work at times to hold the pole and present the rig tidy. But I managed to sort of battle it out a little bit. I caught a couple of carassios, a couple of F1s on that. It's died on me a little bit, so I started pinging a few 4mm with a catapult just to try and make something happen. Like there was like no indications, no bites or nothing, and the lake was fishing really hard. So I started loose feeding with a catapult to try and make a bit of noise, drag a few fish into the area, and try and make something happen. I did catch a couple more carassios doing that, and I did have a couple of carassios and one F1 shallow. Last hour it's been really hard all around the lake. You know, you could see that people wasn't catching. The bloke in the end peg on peg 20, who was in the wind, he caught a good run of fish down his edge. He had a good run of fish down his edge, but other than that, it was really hard. So I managed to nick a few more F1s short on meat coming back on it, and I did have one big F1 on half a top kit in the edge, because I'd only fished sort of half a top kit. We were that close that it was too much to fish any further, so I fished half a top kit, big potted ground bait and micros, fished a worm on the hook. I've had one big F1 there, probably 3 or 4 pound, and like I said, a couple more F1s, and I did have one carp right to the death, probably about 4 or 5 pound on the meat short. But it was a sort of a hard day today where you had to keep moving and keep feeding the line and leaving it alone and go back on it, and you might nick a fish. But it was a really good day, to be fair. I did throw casters in my one edge on a top kit, and I did catch about 6 pound of perch and roach, which didn't really seem worth catching at the time, but I've only won the section by 4 pounds, so those 6 pound of roach and perch have probably made a difference really, so it was well worth catching. So we'll go into day 2 tomorrow. I'm going to python and acorn, so hopefully I'll have a nice draw tomorrow, and we'll keep the festival running. So here we are, peg 9, day 2 of the Guru Festival. Hopefully we'll catch a few fish, but it's not a great peg. It's the hardest part of the lake, I'd say. The middle of the lake is quite hard. The pegs opposite are pretty good, but these pegs on this bank don't seem to produce that well. So I got 2 end pegs in my section, so hopefully I can muster a few fish together maybe nick second in the section, second or third in the section. I think it'd be a good result from here. So let's get to the fishing and we'll have a little catch up after. Just in the van now, just finished fishing. I've weighed in 50 pound 5 ounces. Just going up to the pub now to have a beer. I managed to win the section. To be honest with you, I didn't think I could win the section from here, because James was on an end peg that's caught a lot of fish yesterday, 80 pound, and the other end peg 35 at 90 pound yesterday. So I thought it would be quite a push to beat those two, but luckily for me, the lake's fished quite hard. James weighed 47 pound. There's been another 40 pound, and I've had 50 pound 5 ounces. So I've actually won Python as the lake, but it's split with 8 gone. So I've won the lake, won the section, 2 section wins first 2 days. You can't grumble about that. I caught, the wind's been horrendous today. I caught 2 fish early, kinder potting ground bait and fishing 3 dead reds on the hook. I caught 2 like £1.5 carp early over 16 meters. The wind just got too much then, I just couldn't fish it. It was just impossible to get over there. I did chuck a little method in there, but they just didn't want that. I don't think it's the same when you chuck a method in there, especially with these short chucks. But yeah, so I caught two carp on that. I've started off kindering pellets into the gap, and I caught carassios and small little carp on that. I started pinging it, and that brought a few extra fish in. I caught had some nice runs of carassios on that. I did have 1 carassio shallow, but they never really come in properly. I did have 4 fish on meat short, but that was like quite late, probably the last hour and a half of the match. I sat short and had four carp, but they were decent sized carp. Probably 3 to 4 pound, the ones I had on our short line. And then to get me out of trouble was I big potted the edge with ground bait and maggots in about 2 foot of water. And the last 30 minutes of the match was absolutely solid. I was just kinder potting a big kinder, few maggots, bit of crushed expander. Go down there, put it in, 5 maggots on the hook, and I've caught a 1 real big carp, sort of 7 pound, and a few big F1s and sort of 4 to 5 pounders as well down that edge, which have really bumped my weight up. So I probably caught 25 pound of my weight in the last 30 minutes down that edge. So, you know, you've got to have that little bit of luck sometimes in these festivals, and today I've had that little bit of luck. And hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, we got 3 days left. Hopefully the luck continues. So tomorrow I am going to Bolingey, which is one of my most favourite lakes in the whole world. So hopefully we'll catch some real big ones tomorrow. But yeah, 2 days in, 2 section wins. Wish me luck, I'll keep going. So here we are guys, day 3. We're at the halfway point, and I'm going to Bolingey, which is my most favourite venue. Oh, it's just awesome. The size of the fish, catching down the edge, just big huge proper lumps. It's just a great venue, great fishing. It's always my favourite sort of trip day of the week. It used to be Porth, but now Porth's not in. Bolingey is my ultimate favourite day, so hoping for a good draw. We're just driving down. The draw should come out now as we're on the way, and hopefully we'll have a good day. So we'll catch up once the draw's out, and I'll show you my peg. So here we are, the draw's out. I'm on peg 1, Bolingey. It's a nice end peg with the wind blowing into it. Got all our bottom bank to fish to. Hopefully catch a few short in that edge later on. Yeah, it looks a lovely peg. Wind's blowing in. It's a bit of a cold wind, but hopefully we'll catch a few fish short, a few fish on that edge, a few fish up the bank, and hopefully we'll have a good day. So here we are, day 3, peg 1 Bolingey. Now, I showed you the peg earlier, the wind was blowing into it. I really fancied it, to be honest. Like, it's an end peg. I thought that I would catch a lot of fish short and in the edges, but as it happened, not a lot of fish wanted to feed, and for the first sort of 3 hours of the match, it's been really tough. So I've had a few bites on a top kit with pellets, fishing expander, feeding micros, fishing expander. I've had some bites there, but I missed them all, and I think they were the crassios, because when I went out to 5 meters, I had a bite to chuck on an expander, but only hooked a handful of small crassios, sort of like 6 to 8 ounce. So it wasn't great, and for the first sort of 2.5 hours, I've only got like 20 pound in the net. I've caught some crassios and 1 carp. I fished 30 meters up my edge for a long time, thinking I might catch a carp, and it never really happened. With 2 hours ago, I would say I was close to last in the section. I wouldn't say I was last, but I was close to it. I only had about 25 pound in the net. Now, I fed my left hand margin with 2 hours ago, big pot of micros, a few maggots, and I fed my right hand edge the same, big pot of micros and a few dead maggots. Now, with about 1 hour and 45 left to go to the match, there was a few people around the lake that sort of had like 80 pound, 70 to 80 pound, and I thought, you know, I need to have a good run. I need to concentrate on these edges, and I need to have a good run in the edge. So with 1 hour and 40 to go, I was fishing my right hand edge, and nothing's really coming in there. I'm not getting any indications, I'm not getting any bites, and it's been really hard. But I looked to my left. Now, it was only 18 inches deep right against the boards to my left, and I looked to my left and there was a swirl there. So straight away I come in, grabbed my rig, baited it up, 2 worms on the hook, went down there, waited, and I waited probably 10 minutes, but I did have one about sort of 6 or 7 pound. But it was clear that the fish were coming in that side and not the deeper side. So I fed it again with some micros and maggots again, come back in, baited it up with sort of 5 maggots on a size 12, gone down there, and I've caught quite regular then for about 40-45 minutes, and I got up to about 100 pound. And I thought to myself, I'm still behind sort of 3 people on the lake, but I've caught myself up a little bit. Now, for the last sort of hour of the match, it's been really frustrating, and I can't understand what's going on, because there's been loads of fish coming into that edge, and you can see tails, you can see swirls, there's so many fish coming in there, and you just can't get a bite. And I just don't know what I could have done to make it better, but I've sort of been patient, sat there on maggots, and I've caught a few fish towards the end. I've ended up weighing 158 pound, which has got me second in the section. James Howarth has won the section with 166 pounds, so well done to him. So it's not a disaster, second in the section, but I feel like if I could have sorted out those fish that were coming in that edge, because there was a lot of fish coming in there, and I'll show you a video of the fish coming in there, but I feel if I could sort that out a bit earlier, then perhaps the section win could have been on the cards. But as it happens, I finished second, you know, 2 wins in a second, first 3 days, It's not too bad. I'm lying, I think, 6th or 7th in the festival at the moment. There's 4 people on maximum points. I think Sam Powell, Andy Power, Phil Canning, and who's the other? I think Trig is also on 3 wins. So you know, there's a few people on 3 wins. There's 2 people above me on 2 wins a second, and there's a few below me on 2 wins a second. So we're going to polo in tomorrow. Hopefully we'll draw a good peg tomorrow, catch a few fish, and hopefully win the section. Guarantee us a top 10 finish in the festival, and then we can attack the last day and see if we can get a section win to finish a bit higher. So there we are, Bolingey done. So here it is, peg 28. Every peg is in along here, but you know, I got a lot of water to go at. Hopefully fish long with pellets. Got a method chuck into the gap, but I haven't got an island to chuck to. Maybe catch a few perch and roach in the edges there, and then a short meat line. We'll see how it goes, but at least I'm in a fair section. We were all in a line by here, so we're all like 27s there, and then it goes right way down to like peg 15, 16. So we're all in a line, so it's quite a fair section, I'd say. So hopefully 50 or 60 pounds should give me good points. Day 4 of the Guru Festival. My turn on the Match Lake, and I'm sat on peg 28 on the famous high bank. It's flat calm at the moment, but we're forecast 30-mile-an-hour winds, so it's going to be a bit of a tricky one today to decide what I'm sort of going to do. But I really want to fish pellets long, but it's whether the wind will allow me. So we're just back from fishing now. It's been a horrendous day. I'm just in the van. I'm soaking wet. The wind's been terrible for the first 3 hours, and it's been torrential rain. It's brightened up for the last 2 hours, but for the first 3 hours it was a complete write-off. The boys that had island chucks have caught on bomb and bread. They've had odd F1s, odd carp. I'm the only one in my section that's not got an island chuck, so I've had to chuck into open water. I've managed 1 F1 first cast, fishing a little pellet feeder with micros in it and a hair rig worm head. I've had 1 F1 straight away on that, but as I say, the boys chucking against the islands have all caught odd F1s and odd carp on a bomb and bread early. So I was probably 15 pound behind a lot of people. I started fishing in the edge for perch and roach because I just couldn't do anything else. The wind was that bad. I've caught probably 10 or 12 pound of perch and roach, which got me sort of to about, I'd say 14 pound. Well, boys were like sort of up to 16, 17 pound by that point, so I was still behind. The wind's dropped the last 2 hours. I've gone out on the long pole on the deck, and I've managed 4 or 5 F1s on that, and a few stocky carp. I've managed two fish shallow, 1 big blonde F1 and 1 carp about 4 pound, and that's where I've ended. I've ended up with 32 pound. I've ended up second in the section. I've just beat Steve Conway next door by about 10 or 12 ounces, and Fran O'Reilly have won the section on 25. He's had a nice run of F1s and 1 big carp, sort of 8 pound, fishing shallow with pellets. So he's fished a great match, to be fair, Franev, so he's well deserved to win that section. But I snuck in second, so 4 days in I've got 2 wins and 2 seconds. So hopefully I need a win tomorrow, and I'll give me 3 wins, a second, dropping a second. That should get me in top 10. So hopefully we'll have a good day tomorrow and have a good draw, and we'll see what happens. So here we are, the final day of the Guru Festival, on my way to Twin Oaks. I said yesterday I needed a good draw. I've drawn peg 15 on Twin Oaks. So it's a fantastic peg. Probably 15 and 17 are the two best draws on there, and I've drawn 15. I have got a tough section. I've got James Hower, Fran O'Reilly, Steve Conway on 17, but you can't ask for more than have a chance and draw one of the best pegs in the section. So hopefully we'll get down there, we'll get set up, and we'll have a brilliant day. But this is the best chance I had this week of a section win. So hopefully we'll catch a few fish and we'll see what happens. So here we are at the peg 15 Twin Oaks. A little bit of wind. Looks absolutely fantastic, to be honest. It's a brilliant peg. One I've been looking to draw for a long time. Never been close to this. So hopefully I'll catch a pile of fish. I'm hoping to fish a bomb to the far bank. Pellets long on the pole, meat short, and hopefully catch some down that edge end. So we'll see what happens. Wish me luck. So we just finished the match. We're just driving back up to the lodge. I've had £217.10. I've won the section. I think I've won the lake. I'm not quite sure where that puts me in the festival. I've had 3 wins, 2 seconds, so hopefully I'll be top 10. I think I will be top 10, but it just depends on the other boys to see what position I finish. But I've had a lovely day. I've had 1 on bomb and bread in the first 20 minutes. Then it's got a bit hard, and I was panicking a little bit, but I picked up the waggler after feeding sort of a couple of 6 mils, and chucked the waggler at 2 foot, just a straight Dura wag. Chucked it at 2 foot with a 6 mil. Managed to catch 4 or 5 on that, which got me back in the hunt, because Steve Conway was catching really well to my right, sorry, on 17, fishing a long pole on pellets on the deck. He was catching F1s and Crassios and odd carp, and he was well in front of me, to be fair. But I managed to nick a few on the bomb and meat over the top of that line where I've been pinging pellets with a waggler, which is about 1.5 meters, 2 meters off the bank. I've had a good little run there where I've had sort of 4 or 5. And then I've swapped between the waggler and chucking the bomb. I've chucked the bomb over the waggler line a few times and nicked one. I've had an odd fish on a waggler throughout the rest of the sort of 3 hours. And I've had an odd fish on the bomb and meat, just chucking in and about the sedges on the far bank. Probably got to about 110, 115 pound in the first 3 hours. I asked Steve Conway what he had, and he said that he had 135. So I was still in the hunt. He was ahead, but he wasn't too far ahead. 2 hours to go. I fed my meat line with a half a 250 pot of meat, probably about 100 mil of meat. Just dumped down on my 5 meter line, thinking I'm going to catch short in the edges for the last 2 hours. Put a pot of micros and a pot of ground bait down my edge. I chucked the waggler again. Caught 2 more on the waggler, which were, one was a big F1, sort of 5 pound, and the other one was a carp, probably 5 or 6 pound, which got me up to 125 around our mark. I locked down my edge with 1 hour and 40 minutes to go, and there was a tail in there, so I got a big worm on, gone down there, and I caught some big fish down the edge then, and an odd F1 as well mixed in. I've just fished the last sort of hour and 40 minutes down my edge. Worm was probably the best bait. A single worm. I didn't have many on double worm. A single big worm was good. I did have quite a few on bunches of red maggots, but it was very, very, very sort of strange how fish would come into your peg but you couldn't catch them. So what I ended up having to do was fish a big large kinder pot, kinder some ground bait of micros, and put my rig directly over that kinder, which sort of like set a little trap. And I think the carp and F1s were coming straight to that bait and sucking in the whole lot, and I was getting bites quite quickly doing that, setting that little trap. So I didn't bother feeding with the big pot that much in the last 40 minutes. I think I only fed once to drag a few fish back in when it went off. I fed with a big kinder, set a little trap, and was catching them that way. But I've had some real big fish down that edge, up to sort of 15 pound. I've had a really, really nice day, and hopefully a frame placed in a festival. So I just got back from the Guru Festival, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a summary of my week. Obviously I've done a daily blog of my pegs and what I caught off those pegs, but I thought I'd just sit back, do a little bit of summary of how my week went and what I think I got wrong and what I think I done right, and sort of just give you a sort of insight into what I feel about my festival. So I was 5th overall. I feel like at least one day I should have done better. The day on Bolingey I was on there, James had beat me by, I think it was 8 or 9 pound. I've had a lot of fish in my edge the last hour that were tailing up and making a nuisance of themselves, and very difficult to catch, foul looking fish, and struggling to get them in the mouth. So that day I feel like I should have really took that section out that day, which if I did would have won me the festival. So I've made, I've made a few mistakes, I feel, throughout the week, but I've made a few right decisions that I feel I've got right, and I've got better results off the pegs than I should have had. So overall, I say I'm quite happy with my festival. So day one, my festival started at Trelawney on peg 23. It's a brilliant area, brilliant peg. The only downfall to it is you're a bit tight. It's on a bit of a point, and you're facing the point, so you've got a lot of water in front of you, but there's people either side you quite close. So you haven't got an edge. It's all about fishing like sort of longer. But it's a really good area. There's some big F1s live there, and I've caught some fish on meat. I've plumbed my meat line up. It's quite deep, quite close in. So I plumbed my meat line like up the slope a little bit. So I'm fishing on a top 5, but holding on to my number 4 section. So I come up out of the silt. I find that on places like WhiteAcres, coming up out of that silt on a little bit harder bottom gives you cleaner bites. And I've caught some good F1s there where boys around me have sort of struggled to get bites on it. So I think that was a real good decision to make for there. Long, I fished pellets. I started off tapping pellets on the deck. I've caught a few Carassios and a few small F1s out there doing that. I really thought they were going to come shallow. So I started pinging a few 4mm pellets to try and get fish up shallow, but I only caught 2 fish shallow. And to be honest with you, I probably would have been better off just carrying on tapping pellets in, because when you start loose feeding pellets, more bait goes in the swim, the bottom turns into a bit of a mess with fish are digging around in it, and it started fizzing, struggling to get bites. But you live and learn on that. I never had a bite on the feeder. I did catch sort of 6 or 7 pound of roach, maybe 8 pound of roach in the edges, roach and perch, which was a good little weight builder. Do you mean? So that I did catch a few fish there. I've had a nice day. I've won the section. I feel like peg 20 and peg 19 are probably the 2 best pegs in that section, because they got a lot of room. they're end pegs with a lot of room. So I feel they're the two best pegs in that section. So to win the section, I was really happy with. So that's day one. Day two, I was going to the little lakes. So it was python and acorn. Acorn's been fishing really, really well. Loads and loads of F1s coming out there. There's been big weights, sort of 100, 140 pounds, 120 pounds. It's been a really good lake. Python it's a brilliant lake. It's really fair. I always feel like on Python you've got a chance of winning the section from any peg. There is pegs on there that are clearly better than others, but I feel like if you get your match right, there's a chance of winning this section from any peg on there. So I was happy whether I was on Python. If I was on acorn, I wanted a good draw because the fish been up one end. I drew peg 9 on Python, which it's a decent area. Do you mean in the past I've seen fish caught there, and there's a lot of bigger fish, bigger carp sort of live there. I did have 2 end pegs in my section, peg 35 and peg 3. James Howarth was on peg 3, so I thought that he was going to be really hard to beat. Fran O'Reilly was on 33, which is a very, very consistent peg on Python. So I felt like I was up against it a little bit with James on 3 and Fran on 33 and 35 in. But I've managed to sort of get out of jail a bit. I've fished pellets in the deep water in between heading towards the gap. I've caught Carassios and an odd F1 there. I fed it to try and catch them shallow, but I only ever caught one Carassio shallow, sorry. But I caught well on the deck. I had 2 sort of bigger carp, sort of 1.5 to 2 pound carp against the island with ground bait and maggots. But the wind was just horrendous. You couldn't hold it. I caught them 2 fish really early, first 15-20 minutes, and then the rest of the day it was a write-off. I couldn't hold the pole over there. But I have caught a couple of big carp short on meat. Again, just coming out of that sort of deep water, just coming up onto the harder bottom. I always feel that's the best way to catch fish on places like WhiteAcres where the bottom's quite silty. So I've caught a couple of big carp there. And then down my left-hand edge, I've put ground bait down there with some dead maggots. And the last sort of 40 minutes of the match, I caught some carp down there and a couple of F1s. And I've ended up winning the section. So that was a bit of a result, that was, because I felt like my timings was right for the edges, dropping it on my meat line, I'd nick a fish. You wouldn't have to spend too much line on it. You'd get a quick bite. And if you waited on it, you just wait and you wouldn't get any more bites. You had to catch a quick fish, leave it alone, go back out on your pellet line, tick away until sort of there's time for another one there, and you drop it and you catch another one. So I felt like my timings were right. Felt like I fished a really good match on that one. So that was another section win. That was 2 wins in the first 2 days. Then I was off to Bolingey. Now I love Bolingey. It's one of my favourite days of the week. I drew peg 1 on the first arm. Now it's an end peg with a wind blowing in it, and I looked at it and thought, I really, really fancy this. End peg with a wind blowing in it. What can get better? I spoke to a few people and they said to me they don't think peg 1 is that good of a peg. But as I said, I really fancied it. It started the match. It's taken me 2.5 hours to catch a carp. I caught a few small Carassios and things like that, but it took me 2.5 hours to catch a proper carp. I managed to nick a few carp then short in the next sort of hour, and I did have one long up the edge, 13 metres to my right hand edge, which is the bottom bank. But it was clear there was not a lot of fish coming out, and looking up the lake, Steve Conway, Gary Thomas and James Howarth were all sort of way ahead of me at that point. I reckon I had about 25-30 pound on the clicker, and it was going into the last 2 hours of the match. But lucky for me, a few fish have turned up in the edge, and when I first went in there, it was really good. Fishing a worm on the hook, feeding micros, and I caught a good run of good fish, sort of 7 to 8 pound fish, and I got myself right back into it. And then I've nicked odd fish through the last hour, but there was a lot more fish there to be caught that I just couldn't get on the hook. I changed to maggots sort of late on in the match, which brought me a run of fish. I felt like they were like ignoring the bigger baits, the bigger hook baits. So I changed to maggots, and I did catch a few quite quick fish doing that. But again, after I done that, they become very hard to catch. They were coming in and they were wafting around, and they do your head in a little bit, because there's lots of fish in your swim and you just can't get them on the hook. I've tried coming shallow, I tried going past my feed, I tried loads of different things to get a couple of extra fish, and I just couldn't catch them. But I've weighed 158 pound, and James Howarth have had 166, so he's done me by 8 pound. But he's fished a lovely match, to be fair, and James is a brilliant angler, so well done to him. But I felt like I've let that one slip a little bit. I think that that was one that I should have won the section on. I really feel that I've let that one slip. But that's the way it goes down WhiteAcres. You've got to make the most of some pegs, and sometimes you make mistakes and slip up, and that to me was a slip up. Day 4, I was going to Polowin. The weather forecast was really, really bad. Torrential rain and high winds, sort of 30-mile-an-hour gusts. I've drawn the high bank, which is quite open. If anyone who knows WhiteAcres, it's quite an open sort of area of the lake, that is. The wind has been horrendous. I've plumbed up a long line on the deck, plumbed up a short line for fishing meat, I plumbed up an edge line for throwing casters, trying to catch some roach and perch, and I had a feeder chuck. So everyone in my section on the high bank were all in a line. So everyone's got an island to chuck to, and I'm the only peg with no island. So I just chucked into open water where the gap was. Now, I chucked out and I had an F1 first chuck, because the wind was quite bad. You couldn't hold the pole. But I never had another bite after that on that line. And everyone that had an island chuck caught on bomb and bread and method feeders, nicking odd fish. Sort of when that wind was really bad, they nicked odd fish on that island, which just kept them sort of creeping further and further ahead of me. Some people were on 6 or 7 fish by the time I, come off that feeder, and was like, right, this is not working. So I was quite a far way behind at that point, and I was starting to worry, because the wind was that bad that I couldn't fish my long line. I couldn't catch on a feeder. I'm thinking, well, where am I going to catch a few fish from? I've gone in my edge on a nice light rig. I started fishing for roach on casters, roach and perch. I managed to put together about probably 10 to 15 pound of roach and perch in sort of an hour and a half spell, where I was catching on the edge. I've caught a couple of perch that were a pound, some big roach, so 10, 12 ounce roach, lots of small roach, smaller perch as well. So I've caught some fish down here. Felt like with my 1F1 and my sort of 15 pound of bits, I was up to sort of 16, 17 pound, and I was still behind a few people, but I was thereabouts of them at that point. And the wind had dropped a little bit. So the last 2 hours of the match, the wind had dropped. So I fed my long line again. I've gone back out on it, started pinging pellets, fishing a worm on the hook. And I managed to nick a few small stockies, a few F1s, and I felt like I was getting myself sort of going again, do you mean? And I started nicking an odd fish, and I looked down the section, and Fran O'Reilly have gone out and he started fishing shallow. And he's fished a lovely match, to be fair. And he's caught a few F1 shallow, a few big F1 shallow, and he's had a carp sort of 7 pound on it as well. So Fran was like sort of way ahead of me at that point. But between the rest of the section, it was very, very close. So I carried on pinging pellets, carried on fishing on the bottom, nicking a very odd fish. And I felt like I needed to make something happen. So the last 40 minutes I've gone out and I've started fishing shallow, sort of 3 foot deep. And I caught an F1, caught a big blonde F1, which is about 2 or 3 pound. And it made me sort of stay on it for another sort of 20 minutes. I had no more bites on that. So I've dropped back on the bottom and I've caught like 1 or 2 little stocky carp, they're sort of 8 to 10 ounce. I caught a couple of them, and it was like 15 minutes left of the match, and I thought, right, I'm going to have to go out and try the shallow again, because it's a bit close for comfort here. It's Fran was way ahead in the section at that point, but everyone else was really, really close, and 1 or 2 fish could really make a difference. So I've gone back out on the shallow line, flicked the rig over, 3 foot deep, fed a bit of bait, done that a few times, float's gone, struck, elastic's out, and I've had a carp of £5. And as it happens, that's the last fish I had. And come the way in, I've nicked the section. I've nicked second in the section. Fran was way ahead. He's had 50 odd pound. He fished a lovely match called F1 shallow and an odd carp, and put his eggs in one basket. But had a really, really nice match, and did it really, really neat and tidy. So he deserved to win the section. But I've had £32, and I've just beaten Steve Conway next door by just about £1. So that £5 carp has really, really boosted me up a section, and I've ended up second on that one. So I felt like that decision to go out shallow again has paid off, and I've just nicked second in the section. So I was happy with that. I felt it was a really good result from me, especially with the weather the way it was, not having an island chuck. I was really happy with second from there. So last day, Twin Oaks, and I was hoping for a really good draw, because you can, on Twin Oaks, you can draw out of it a bit in the sections. So I was hoping for a really good draw, and boy did I get it. The draw came out and I was on peg 15 Twin Oaks, which is the first time I've ever been down in that area. Everyone knows about 16, peg 16 Twin Oaks is a known peg all around the country. Probably the best peg in Britain, I would have said. But 16's not in, so 15 and 17 are in. And I'm on 15, so I'm very, very close to peg 16. So I really, really fancied it. And 15's been a good peg all week. My mate Power, he drew it early in the week, had £220. So there's a lot of fish there, and I really fancied it. Second array of rigs, long, shallow, long fishing pellets, shallow lines, meat short, edge rigs. I set up a bomb and bread, bomb and meat, a little method feeder, and a waggler. So I've set up the kitchen sink to make sure that I'm going to make the most of this peg. So an hour in, and I had 1 fish, and I was sort of getting a bit panicky. Steve Conway and James Howarth on 17 and 18 were both catching fish on the pole. So I was getting a little bit sort of panicky, but I kept my head together. Chucked the waggler out, caught a few quick fish on a waggler, probably 4 or 5 fish on a waggler. Got myself sort of back into it, got my head straight. Died a little bit, the waggler did. So I've then chucked the bomb about. Chucked the bomb of meat, caught a couple on that, just in and around the sedges. I chucked the bomb over the top of where I'd been feeding the waggler, which was about 3 metres off a bank. Sort of in a deep, slightly deeper water. I chucked that bomb and meat over the top of that, and I caught 5 really quick fish on that. Like literally as I'm sinking, the line is gone. So I picked the waggler back up after I stopped getting a few bites on that. Chucked the waggler again, caught another 4 or 5 fish on a waggler. We sort of like 3 hours into the match then, and I sort of had about £100, about 110, 115 pounds, something like that. Fed my edges 2 hours ago. Fed my short line, fed my edges. Chucked the waggler again for another sort of 15-20 minutes. Caught another 2 fish on that. A big F1 and a carp. Got me to about £125. Dropped in short on meat, never had a bite. There was like an hour and 45 minutes left to go at this point, hour and 40. Dropped in on meat short, never had a bite, which I was quite surprised about, because I thought I'd probably catch quite well on that. But it never budged. I looked on my edge, and there was a swirl there. So I've gone in, big kinder pot, a big worm on the hook. Gone in, and I've caught a 10-pounder first drop. So made my decision a little bit easier, that I was going to sort of concentrate on that edge. And I've caught well in that edge in spells. You know, there was times when fish didn't want to come in there, and I had to sort of big pot it, leave it alone, let them come back, and then catch a few like that. But to be honest, I caught really well in spells down that edge, and I've ended up weighing 217 pound to win the section and win the lake. So ended the week on a high. So I've ended up with 3 wins, 2 seconds, and I ended up joint 4th with Sam Powell, but he beat me on weight. I was just a point off being top of the tree. So it's 1st, 2nd and 3rd all had 4 wins, dropping a result. So yes, I feel like I've had a good week. Hope you enjoyed the match blog they've done, the daily blog. Gives you a bit of an insight into the WhiteAcres festivals and how they go and the pegs down there. I'm going to be doing another one for the Preston Festival later in the year. Yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. And if you have, like I say all the time, drop me a like and a subscribe. And I'll be doing loads more, match blogs, I guess, festival blogs, live matches.